Hi.
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 So far, so good.
What are we doing? We um we have been thinking for a while about this possible distinction between gender critical feminism
Yeah.
and just people who call themselves gender critical
Yeah.
and they don't say feminism.
Yeah.
And maybe this has become it's actually salient for me because between my two books, 1 year apart, I dropped. Not that I dropped it terminologically, but I wrote a book called Gender Critical Feminism about gender critical feminism, but then I published a collection of essays much more focused on trans topics.
Yeah.
And I called that Essays in Gender Critical Philosophy. And that was partly
I wonder
after
if that was deliberate.
it was deliberate.
Okay, yeah.
And it was after some kind of provocation from some of the male gender critical philosophers who had said explicitly that they didn't really identify with the feminism part of the term.
Yeah.
And so then I started thinking, oh, maybe we should be calling it gender critical philosophy. And then some of us are feminists.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever really figured out.
So you were just trying to be expansive there.
Trying to be expansive.
Yeah.
And whenever I do, like, I don't know, if I do a podcast or something, it's normally about gender critical feminism. So I just tell my stuff.
Yeah.
And then I did one earlier this week, and the interviewer, or whatever you call the discussant, asked, what is the distinction?
Right. Because they had noticed it.
Yeah, and she I think had just noticed that loads of people seem to be calling themselves gender critical.
Yeah.
But not with commitments that she would necessarily identify.
Right.
Either with her movement or with feminism.
Yeah, because she thought there's a distinction to be made.
Yeah. But I think she expected me to like just make a clear, oh, one is this and one is that.
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, Kate and I are about to record a video because we haven't fully figured out for ourselves what is the just gender critical thing. So I think this is us wanting to work it out, right?
Yeah. But that is interesting that more and more people, non-feminist people and normal people, are using the phrase gender critical.
Yeah.
So it is really now in the public sphere, that phrase?
I think so, yeah. Maybe that is how people are coalescing around. And that would sort of make sense, wouldn't it, if it's like it's suddenly getting all this uptake in the US under Trump?
Yeah.
Are they using that for
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Like I mean, we talked about this a little while ago, and I said there is a clear distinction.
Yeah.
Between people who are sex realist, like just sex realist, and then the people who are feminist.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I hadn't thought that people are like making that distinction when they say I'm gender critical and not a feminist.
Yeah, I guess the weak version of it could just be like one thing I was trying to say in the gender critical feminism book was like, this is actually feminism and it has a lot in common with radical feminism.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's highly preoccupied with trans issues.
Yeah.
So one minimal thing that could be going on is just that people also agree with us about trans issues.
Yeah.
And then they're GC.
Yes. Yeah.
Just because they think men should get out of women's sports.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. Like, are they maybe all of them even critical of gender?
Right. Or even know what
gender critical bit capture it. Like, that's making reference to the sex gender distinction. It's saying we're the people who are critical of the gender, but we think sex is real. Is that what's the history of the
thing is, I don't even know whether in the history that's what they meant. Like, the first person to use it, is it that they were really trying to say gender is not identity, gender is this thing, because we want to abolish it or eliminate it, we're critical of it, not embracing of it. That's a backwards way to read it, but I don't know what that first usage.
Yeah. Whereas I wondered whether it was more we're putting what the object of the critique is gender, not sex. I mean, that's a retrospective reading too.
Yeah. No,
and of course I mean, then there's that whole debate too, like some of the radical feminists were the sex abolitionists. And, yeah.
So I don't know that. So one way to draw the distinction is that way, like just very broad usage of GC or anyone who roughly agrees with some of the positions on trans stuff. but not necessarily for feminist reasons.
Yeah.
Or just, isn't a feminist, but happens to have that view. And maybe we were still a little bit fighting it out over that meaning in the last few years. And haven't necessarily won it. Like, maybe there is just GC and the constant F attempt is just like a losing battle, or that's possible.
Do you think losing to who?
Like, what? I was making a gambit when I wrote my book to, like, reel people into, like, hey, but also all these other sex-based issues that we're losing sight of in contemporary feminism.
I see. So what you're saying is, like, we've managed to gather some adherence on this issue.
On the trans issue. Yeah. But it might be that, like, well, it's actually not that anyone cares about pornography, or it's not even that we've managed to, like, reel people in on trans issues and then tell them what gender used to mean and get them to be gender abolitionists.
Yeah. But that is, if people aren't getting on board with other issues, does that mean they're not really getting on board with the trans issue for any reason that relates to women's interests?
Totally. Yeah. And the one thing I was thinking about was, like, I think you've said before in conversation, right? Like, there's a sort of fixation on the truth claims of the trans movement or whatever. And so one way I was thinking, because when I answered this briefly in the podcast, the only thing I could kind of immediately reach for was, like, maybe a lot of people can agree about, like, truth and science mattering. And so they come on board with the trans stuff because they're like, well, of course you can't change sex. Of course there are only two.
I'm wondering if the phrase that better captures them, I guess, is just what arrived on the scene a bit later, is the sex realist.
Yes, that might be right. It's just slightly confusing because of how the different feminists have appropriated that term, and they don't mean only that, right? So then it's almost like, okay, the people who are now calling themselves sex realist feminists, who are actually different feminists, they
you want to say they're different to the gender critical feminist?
No, I just think because there's a thing that is descriptively called being a realist about sex, which means I don't have scientific views.
But it's very minimal. The difference feminist of, like, the sex realist feminist claim is what has a bit more in it.
They're still feminist. They just have a different set of views about, like, women, about sex differences and what they mean for women's liberation. I'm just thinking it's confusing if, like, everyone's using the wrong labels for themselves. So the people who are, like, GC only, they just care about truth and fighting pseudoscience.
I just have this question, like, do they?
Rather than what?
Well, I don't. There seems there's indignation on their side. It's not. There seems like that. There seems like something political there too. But
that's, I think, the interesting question, right? Because there could be stuff that's still humanist, and then you would be right that it's more than just truth and science. It's also, like, fairness.
Okay. So
like men not winning at women's sport.
I was going to say, especially in the sport case, right? Like, there's so much indignation.
But
not just like
not political. It's not feminism, right?
No,
so maybe
it's more liberal, maybe, or
because we believe in equal opportunity and fair.
Okay.
But then, so it's like there's still going to be a difference between that and the, like, having a feminist motivation for holding the claim. And the two things I was thinking about where that distinction would be explanatory, if the difference between GC and GCF is truth and science and maybe a little sprinkling of liberal values like fairness, versus having a very strong motivation to care about women's interests, and then with latitude for whether you think men and women are the same way, it's going to predict different attitudes in at least two areas, which I thought were, so sport is one, we should talk more about that. But the other one I was thinking about was the pronoun dogmatism. So the dogmatists are like absolutists about, like, you always and only ever use sex-based pronouns. And somehow that's become, like, almost like the issue, like almost as though everything else will follow from that. And the only way I can really understand that is, like, but it's just not true that he's a she or she's a he.
So is your sense that the GC people are dogmatists about pronouns in this way.
Yes. But
Interesting.
I might be wrong about that. It might be that there's still feminists who are dogmatists about pronouns because they think it's some sort of linchpin for a feminist.
Oh, yes. I was actually thinking that feminists might be partly because I keep having this experience of like when I talk to like normal people.
Yeah.
And I will often start with the sport or it's like a way of drawing them in.
Yeah.
And then, I absolutely not know men and women's sport.
Yeah.
And I'll say, but call yourself whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, why call yourself whatever you want? What so
Yeah.
you're saying we should lie? What is your thought that it's fine to just lie in some cases?
Yeah.
It's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Do you I guess they could say, well, the term, maybe we can just disentangle the terms woman and female and just keep the female only category in sport.
Well, the reason I thought that the pronoun dogmatism was a good test case is that I cannot see any. Oh, sorry, that's already false, but let me say it anyway, and then we can talk about it. I can't see a good reason why they should object so vociferously to a female using the wrong pronouns. So it seems to me like if you really believe in a kind of advantage disadvantaged sex axis, you're going to be like, go for gold if some of the females want to like infiltrate the patriarchy and like succeed as men or whatever, or they want to be called he. I don't have any in principle worry.
But that sounds like it sounds like you're speaking the language of feminism, not the language of humanism.
But I think I'm trying to. My idea was if you had a feminist motivation, you would care about men being called she, but you would not give a shit about females being called he.
Yeah.
And then I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Did you say that you think that's false?
The reason I guess that's false is like, well, of course, you could give a feminist justification for thinking that like any female trying to flee.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. You want loyalty to the class.
Yeah. But then, it is still, well, is it different? I don't know. Good question. Okay.
I wonder actually, do you think maybe that is what we're seeing there is the difference between humanism and feminism? And what's that difference between advantage and disadvantage and class? Maybe if you just want fairness and you don't think that the women are a threat to fairness for men.
Right, then you've got no reason to keep the women out.
But feminism has a class-based analysis and it thinks it's really important for women still do not yet have a sense of themselves being a class.
I guess it just seems one another more important to me that we would keep the men out, like you keep the oppressor out of your.
No, I agree.
Rather than that you keep your oppressed.
No, I know, and Schmidt has this line. I now can't find it within that. What is the political? Where he says something like, "You identify the enemy first,
yes,
and the friend in relation to that."
Yes.
So I still think, I mean that sounds right in terms of priorities.
But maybe,
I still think you get
in your radar.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So that's helpful. So maybe that's not a good. Yeah, somehow it just seemed to me like, what is all this obsessive pronoun behavior and why is it symmetrical between men and women? If you were a feminist, you're really focused on, I'm never going to call a man she. And I feel much more strongly about that. Unless I have to, I'm going to lose my book contract. But I'm really not moved at all by you should never call a female he. Well, maybe it's fine sometimes.
Do you think there's just some pragmatism going on too?
But then that should be symmetrical, right?
Yes, sorry, that's what I'm saying about is the symmetry reflecting some pragmatism. Like we've all lost our minds. Right. And now we need to use the sex-based, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, maybe that's right.
And we're going to generate more confusion if we do it in one case and don't do it in another.
That's true. And it's hard to explain what the exception is.
Yes, okay. So but you think the pronoun dogmatists are humanists or the gender critical people?
Yeah, that was my read, but maybe that's not right. It was my I had a recent experience of being policed for using a female person, referring to a female person as he. And I was just like, how does this matter? That's not our problem. Our problem is men claiming to be women.
Yeah.
So I just was really intolerant about it.
Yeah.
And I'm just intolerant of dogmatism. So that could be part of the explanation.
Yeah.
So should we try sport then?
Okay, so what? And see what we think, what difference. Yeah, what is the difference if you hold gender critical beliefs versus whether you hold gender critical feminist beliefs?
Yeah. Because do you remember, I think we talked about some time ago, um, that some feminists online seem to be arguing that, like, men shouldn't be in women's sports,
Yeah.
even if they didn't go through a male puberty,
Yeah.
and even if the sport is the kind of sport where there would be no,
Yeah.
and they were just like, but they're men.
Yeah.
So they only
Yeah.
had the reason,
Yeah.
but they're men.
Yeah.
And to me, that was really revealing, because
Yeah.
it's like, if you have not got your eye on the feminist reasons why particular spaces or services
I was
matter.
just going to say that, because so is there anything special about sport there, or is it just, or is it just that feminists think we happen to have these like spaces for women and we need to keep them?
We happen to have them and we need to keep them, but if someone presses me on why they matter, I should be able to articulate that.
And you think they can't?
And
or?
if they can't, which they couldn't,
Yeah.
but he's a man.
Yeah.
But sorry, the reason why we have female sport is because of unfair competition.
Yeah.
So if your reason has disappeared, you can no longer just keep them out by fiat. And so I thought that the attempt.
Are there other reasons that you could offer
for their,
for,
like, steelman their view?
yeah, yeah. Like, what are all the, I don't know, I'm thinking about Catherine McKinnon's essay, like, so women and self-possession in sport, or whatever it is, in feminism unmodified, or like, yeah, well, I guess I do feel like sport has feminist significance to women. What, partly because of the, what, I don't, yeah, what, I don't know. Because what is sport, like, somehow training in resistance? Resistance to femininity?
Yeah, okay. But then why would that be a reason not to have a technically male person won or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I guess I sort of, like, I can get on board with that. No, it's something that we need solidarity between women.
Yeah.
And so you're sort of undermining the purpose when there's a male person.
Yeah, because what is it? It is one context in which, but then I guess maybe that's only team sport. I don't know, where like, yeah, women are acting in solidarity with other women.
Right. So then all your individual sports, you would have no justification like that. But you're right. Like, you can maybe come up with further feminist justifications that will get you so far.
Yeah.
But I think if the person is still thumping the table at the end of that,
Yeah.
and the reason is, but they're male, that to me just looks like a truth claim. But it's like, but they're not female. But it's called female sport, but they're not female. And it's like, okay, that's a very, like, obsessive way of thinking about what's true and false that pays no attention to why we have things.
But do you think they just can't quite articulate in the same way I can't why it does matter that it be women only?
You mean you think they have a sense that it matters?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm not being charitable enough, but yeah, my sense is, like, they've revealed that they've run out of reasons, and yet they are not willing to concede the point. And for me, that reveals, it's a kind of humanism, or whatever you would call that, where the thing you care about is just, like, fact of the matter category maintenance.
And you don't think the reason can just be, this is a women only space, and we have reasons for trying to keep women only space? Do you think it does, like, the reason has to relate to it being sport?
Oh no, I think this could apply to other types of spaces. And then I think, I would have the same impulse. Like, if you cannot name a rationale or a reason.
Okay, but so,
But you're just thinking you could go for generic reasons. Like, there's nothing about this space. It's just that there's some goods of having some spaces.
That's right.
Happens to be one. Yeah. Still, shouldn't they be able to say that? Or you think, well, no,
that's right.
About it too hard, or.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the advantage of having read the literature.
Yeah, okay.
But they should, no, you're right, they should be able to say that. But so, do you think there are no, because, like, the fairness stuff, so the humanists are going to say that. So then what does a gender critical feminist say about women's sport? Or about why separate categories? Now it just looks like the gender critical feminist is the same as the humanist, doesn't it?
No, what?
Because, I guess, what is it to think that we need the female only category in sport? All you need to do is have the sex realist view.
But you wouldn't, or are you thinking it's baked into what sex realism entails, that there are going to be these like size and strength differences that create a problem for fair competition? Is the thought that almost all of what the feminist wants to point to falls out of sex difference alone?
Yeah, it was. Do you think that's not right?
Um,
Or maybe that's just the way that the discussion has gone so far. Like, I feel like when gender critical feminists have been asked, or, they have just pointed to sex differences as the reasons we need separate categories. Does that sound right?
that sounds right. Yeah, I think that's a good observation, which maybe shows like sport is a good case for us publicly because there's like lots of uptake for how there should not be trans women in women's sport. But the reasons that tend to be offered, they're not like the ones you've mentioned, where like solidarity among women is important.
Yeah.
It's anti-femininity training, or they
Yeah.
tend to be the like, oh, but he'll injure her more.
Yeah,
or,
that's right.
and they're reasons we would care about no matter the sex. if
Yeah.
that applied. That might be right. And then so other spaces like the domestic violence shelter or whatever are going to be more directly invoking of feminist reasons why it matters to keep them or keep men out.
Yeah.
Um,
But I wonder if even there it depends on what your analysis is of domestic violence.
if you do it in the sense of like it's a keeping women safe given their comparative physical weakness.
That's right. You don't have to be a feminist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of is interesting how much convergence you can get on issues that masks actually like really deep what analytical disagreement.
Yeah. No, it isn't, because I sometimes see like the people who will then, like the philosophers or whatever, you'll see them sometimes, like Thomas, I think in his video, like that'll be earlier in this series, he gives a feminist type reason toward the end, I think, for, now I'm forgetting exactly, for space or for pronoun. Like, so there's somehow like even the people who might think of themselves as just
it was about male violence. We want to keep what sex-based pronouns because we want to track.
Was it
men because they're more violent to women? Because I'm a little like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. I think you do see that. Maybe it's like you might predict that the merely GC, like if your interest is mainly truth or science or something, you're not going to be that motivated by the women-only spaces or reasons where you do need to have a feminist analysis to care about them.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably put Kathleen Stock in the same category.
Yep.
In that, she thinks what we need like separate change rooms and things like that, largely because of biological differences, I think.
Yeah.
Or I guess, because her analysis of rape she attributes it in part to biological differences.
That's interesting. So everyone should be expected to be able to get on board with anything that is following from biological difference.
Yeah.
Because that's a humanist. Like anyone who cares about fairness can care about that.
Yeah, I guess insofar as they shared the view about what falls out of biology.
Yes, right. Where there might be quite a lot of disagreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and is that what we're seeing? Like, are we seeing convergence on those issues? Change rooms, sport?
I guess, like, I would think men are recognizing that it's like a privacy. Yeah, but these are not specifically feminist, are they? Right? There's a lot more universal stuff here. Like everyone wants privacy, and so people have a instinct to want single sex changing rooms in their gyms or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not a feminist reason because men want that too.
Yeah.
So it's not like everything that's sex segregated is a feminist reason.
No, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
But then particular services or maybe positive discrimination provisions are like a good case, clearly sort of feminist justification of making up for historical injustice or finding ways to bring women in to things now. And those will be the test cases where like your GC would be expected to not care about that or notice that or be motivated by that. And
because they think that's in excess of what a commitment to humanism requires.
Yeah, or that's just,
Yeah.
they're not a feminist, so why would they have that on their radar, I guess? It's like if you're not an anti-racist, you're not across caring for the whatever thing that's being demanded in the interests of that group.
Yeah.
So not so much that you know it and reject it, it's just
No,
not
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
things you're
Yeah.
speaking to.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just really, I don't know, I think it's hard to be like, what ecumenical about what feminism is here. I think I see the difference maybe in part because I think what feminism has is a class, like, an analysis of relations between men and women. It's class relations.
But then does that make you think if you can tell a story in terms of class relations for privacy, then privacy is not humanist, it's feminist?
Or maybe you can get it both ways.
You can get it to be both feminist and humanist, or you can get it for both feminist and masculinist reasons. What do you mean?
Oh, okay. No, I was just thinking, well, it just does seem like most of these things you can get either way. I don't quite know how, but
either way.
sorry, and the either way was like, what liberal humanism
Okay.
and feminism.
Okay.
And it's just,
You
what
can
is it?
justify them with either.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Although maybe that's not quite right. Yeah, I don't know. Hmm. I do have this sense that like that actually the difference between us is getting masked, but I'm not sure when it comes to the surface. Like maybe it's just that the difference between us is minimal in comparison to the difference between us and the trans inclusionary people.
Yeah.
But I do have this sense, I find it hard to articulate that, like, what if we win or in the future it'll become clear that actually we've got really different analyses or really different worldviews. And there was just and it was just sort of coincidence.
Yeah, some of these questions could be answered just by like surveying the people who use GC for themselves, but for some reason don't use F. Right, because
Just asking, what do you believe?
Right, because I'm thinking one way of thinking about it, if it is just really this like, say it's just truth, and then I would predict, okay, all the truth claims, like there's just two sexes and humans can't change sex, we'll all agree on those and we'll all be advocating on those. But the prediction will be that they don't care at all about women on its spaces.
Yeah.
Because they're not really a truth claim.
Yeah.
Or maybe they are in the sport case only, because there's a truth about biological advantage.
Yeah.
But there's not really a truth matter. It's all normative when it gets to things about like.
Yeah, and they might say, in various cases, no, we just change the language. Like, we keep female only category in sport.
Yeah.
Maybe female only change rooms, but everything else like is up for discussion.
Yeah. So that would at least like it would predict a difference of opinion about certain issues.
Yeah, and it would maybe explain the like use of the woman as an identity for self-expression. Maybe too. Do you think?
Say more about why?
Or just like the because I guess if they just want to be sex realist and they don't have a sense of, because I feel like what my response to them is like, about like woman names a group with a history of oppression. You think men can just identify? Do you know what I mean? So it's like actually to like justify my view on that, which is different from their view, I immediately have to turn to feminism.
Yes, right. That's good. That would predict another disagreement because you really then care about the terms not being appropriated or anything.
And like, why can't, so you can see it in the case of say of the Indigenous Australian, you don't think anyone should just get to claim it.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
but woman, you think is different. Anyway, yeah.
But that is, I think, the thing. The question is going to be whether, because it's not as though all GCs will be like anti-feminist.
No,
right? And then there's going to be a range of like.
No, what's it mean to suggest that? Yeah.
Well, no, I was just thinking that like for those of them who are like, they don't think women are oppressed anymore.
Yeah.
They think feminism is finished. They don't need a class analysis. There are some like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
And those ones, then I think for sure you should predict that they're only going to agree with us on the truth style claims and not the feminist style claim. But then what about all the ones on Twitter who are just like GC because that's the term, but they do care about feminist stuff? So maybe there's like one thing's the in principle distinction and one thing's that like people aren't actually using the terms that way. Like
you could deal with they are gender critical feminists.
There might be some GCs who are gender critical feminists.
Yeah.
Right? And gender critical feminists, like But the phenomenon is just like what actually in our movement broadly under the umbrella of GC, or even like opposing gender identity, opposing the ideology behind trans inclusion.
Yeah.
On what issues do they agree and what are they motivated by?
Yeah. I mean, it feels somehow like a bit of a loss if people are or have become more feminist and yet are not calling themselves that. I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it just matters that they have the attitude and stand up for the thing.
Yeah,
I guess I'm just saying that sort of like partly reflecting on your point earlier that in some ways what you thought writing a book was like, this is a moment to gather some adherents, or
but I think I thought they already were, they just hadn't fully processed that or realized that. But it was something like, if you find yourself indignant about men claiming to completely share your experience and have no difference from you because of their feelings, you probably actually have a feminist sensibility. And then it's like, hey, welcome, here's some history and reason to, like, you don't only care about like saying no to sex self-ID in the law because of trans issues.
You actually have a worldview, and
but that's different to like actually gaining some new recruits.
I see.
For feminism.
I mean, but that seems like what a cool, ambitious thing to do at the very moment that like we're about to be defeated. Treat that as like, this is an opportunity to really expand. We're going to get more members.
I can't think of any other way to do the distinction, like, because I was sort of thinking about it in Venn diagram terms. Like, I guess a different approach would be the distinction between GC and GCF is we agree about particular things, but for different reasons. But I didn't get further than that. The reasons could be truth and science versus feminism. But maybe there's some other thing that they could believe.
Well, I guess we've already introduced another one, which is liberal humanism,
because that adds more values to the truth and science.
Yes.
Good. And then
that's actually really helpful, because I have been saying for a little while now, I am like quite struck by how indignant just normal people are about like particular issues, the women's sport. And I have sort of taken that, to reveal people's inner feminist.
Oh,
but really? Actually, I think you're right. You can get the indignation.
Yes,
just
about the feminism.
That's right.
Yes. And I think I did, because I know some committed GCs that really don't think women are oppressed.
Yeah.
And so then that's hard to square.
Yeah.
Like, and so then I wonder, what are they committed to? Are they actually just like, they just see the nonsense of gender identity ideology, and it's not more than that for them? So they're just resisting a stupid ideology.
And I guess this is a little bit what Thomas suggested in the pronouns video, right? Like his explanation of why people don't want to do
that's not my religion or whatever.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then a noble God, like...
Yes, no, I agree, absolutely. But I thought that was interesting, because as soon as he started like talking through that example, I did think, that's feminist.
Oh, really?
But just I guess because or just like the indignation about it, or
why?
Because like I guess I felt like, well, you must be occupying an ideological standpoint
in order to see that one's bogus.
Yes.
And you just assumed that standpoint is feminism.
Yeah, but I think you pointed out that could just be liberal neutrality.
Yeah.
You could just be a person who has a really like a firm sense of the like public-private or something, and you think in the workplace,
I think that
no one should be getting to do their ideology.
Yeah. And it seems to me, of course, as I'm sure you agree, like there are just many ideologies, right?
Yeah.
So you could be located at a different one.
Yeah, that's right. Because all it takes is for you to see. I guess they just thought, well, I mean, that is already a distinct group of people, right? The ones recognizing that as an ideology.
Very distinct at the moment.
Yeah. So I was just trying to work out, what is it? What accounts for that? Why are there some people who can see it as an ideology and other people who just think, what do they think is moral truth? It's just progress.
It's progress. It's inclusion. But it seems to me like you could be a Muslim and recognize that it's ideology because it clashes with your faith and your set of tenets.
Yeah.
You could be Yeah, someone who just cares about like a neutral state and sees that this is eating into things that are not supposed to be politicized.
Back to the Muslim example, I guess you have to have a sense, don't you, that of the like worth of your ideology. And I suppose I feel like a lot of people have been told, but like yours is backward now, or
yes, right.
Like, we tolerate that, or like you're allowed to do that at home, but you are meant to understand.
Yeah.
Like that's no longer a like legitimate view to hold.
Right, which I think actually explains the success and uptake of gender identity ideology. Because if you beat people back, say Christians, you beat them back into like mutual toleration, like your ideology is being tolerated, like you just said. But there's this like liberalism in the public sphere where we really care about minorities and inclusion, and now you frame all the trans stuff under that umbrella
rather than as a competing ideology.
Exactly. Then it's so much harder to object to it. And
you're like, what? So we have to do our religion at home, but they get to do theirs in the workplace?
Yes. Rainbow lanyards.
I know.
Every single colleague or whatever. Yeah. But I think that, I guess to go back to your thought, it's just like, if you have the strength of your conviction to clock that as an ideology and resist it, but you could do that for many different reasons, from many different alternative ideologies than just feminism.
And
so the question is, does that explain?
But there's
GC. Are they just coming from one or more?
Oh,
they're a Muslim,
maybe,
GC,
but then I think that does that maybe complicate or put something more in the picture than the truth and science thing.
Yes, good. It does.
Not quite sure what more to say about that, but I feel like, something is being lit up for me.
No, that's
because that's just always how I used to think about that distinction. I remember saying to you really early on about the GC feminist, because our slogan is like adult woman is adult human feel, whatever. Like it makes us feel like we're just mini scientists, and we're not. Like we're feminist,
First. No, but I think that's really helpful, actually. I mean, maybe
maybe no one's a scientist. Like,
well, only
there's
like
more going on for everyone.
Well, there must be some like secular. I'm just like Alex Byrne or whatever. Versus Tom. Like Thomas is Catholic. But Alex, I think, is just like going to be a secular humanist. He seems quite skeptical about feminism. So maybe it's like Thomas has the ideology that is a strength of conviction from faith, but Alex just has, but that's false.
And do you think that's just it?
I don't know. Okay, like maybe you should ask him, but that might be one way to like.
Okay, thank you.
Whereas Moti, for example, sorry, just all the video people. Moti, I think, is like has got the feminist sympathy. So he will be saying, no, women-only spaces are being destroyed by, and these reasons are being undercut. So it's like maybe the GCs are like this very complex mosaic.
It's quite extraordinary.
It's interesting. I just never thought about it properly, and I was like, when I was asked that question, I can only actually explain the GCF side of it. And even that is me imposing order on some madness, right?
That's right. I know. Because even all the feminisms that we want to keep under that umbrella, to have deep disagreements. Okay, so we have made some progress.
Have we reached a view? Kind of, almost.
Have we?
Should we try and state it?
Of what the GC?
I'll be the podcaster. Kate, just to start, can you tell us, like, what is the difference between gender critical feminism and just being gender critical?
Gender critical feminists are first pass people committed to sex realism for feminist reasons.
Oh yeah, good.
Whereas gender critical people are people committed to sex realism for different reasons. Okay, but we didn't talk about this before either, because that's the other thing I was going to say. I mean, what about the gender critical feminists who are a bit more like the sex skeptics?
Or like the social constructionists?
Yeah. Or like some of the radical feminists in the second wave. Maybe me a little bit.
Yeah, you. Yep.
I don't know who else about my team.
Debate. Send people back to Feminist Heretics circa 2020 on whether sex is like rocks and trees.
It's the Catherine stock video.
Kate and Holly. No, me and you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. No, me and you, but were we talking about
Oh, we
Lane
were.
Stock's
I
book,
think her book. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, okay, but so no, sorry.
You're
Do you think
objecting to yourself calling it sex realist because you're thinking, what if you're not a sex realist? That's your
I guess because my first attempt at like articulating the distinction was, okay, everyone shares the sex realist commitment.
Yeah.
And then the feminism have feminist reasons for that commitment.
Yeah.
And the other ones have what?
Alternative ideology or truth.
Or truth or
which is the same thing.
Or is it or what is it? Truth and science or pushing back against indoctrination into an ideology? Is it something like that?
Yes, good. Because you think you could recognize that as an ideology without necessarily thinking you're in possession of the truth or science supports your view.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
You might be right.
Yeah, I guess I'm just reflecting on some of your examples. You could just think like, I don't get to do mine. Or what is that? Maybe that's just like you're just a liberal and you think the public sphere should be.
You've got to make room for
I don't do mine here. You don't do yours either.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, what about all the leftists who are like postmodernists, post-truth, cultural relativists? They're not going to claim truth and science.
No,
they're just going to maybe say no to that one.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like a much simpler.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's more heterogeneity than we originally counted.
Yeah. Wow.
Wait, but what was the thing you said just before that?
Because do you think that? So what do you think those exhaust the reasons? Then the feminists have the feminist reasons, and the GC people have they care about truth.
Yep.
And they care about pushing back against the imposition of an ideology as though it's truth or progress or uncontested.
Yeah, but sorry, no, I just forgot what we were talking about just before. The social constructionists about sex. How are we proposing to make space for them?
No, well, we weren't. I was just thinking as I was talking, this is maybe misleading or
calling it sex realist.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something more like I don't want to frame. Sorry, my thought was frame it more in terms of its resistance to gender identity ideology for this heterogeneous set of reasons. One of which can be feminist reasons. But the worry with that is that's broad, and it allows for social constructionism about sex.
Yeah.
It allows everything we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
The problem is that it then puts trans at the center of the movement in the way that I've been very resistant. Like I want to say trans is our current preoccupation, but it's not about that. It's about women as a class, as a sex class throughout history, and this is just our latest struggle, facing this kind of attempt to erase our language and appropriate our experience or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like that looks kind of promising, but now I don't want to
keep that open definition. I know it does look very appealing to me, but resistance.
Unless it's just like it is the reason why feminists are attracted to the resisting of it. But the feminists, of course, bring their whole history with them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's enough. It doesn't mean that trans is at the center of, like, it doesn't make it reactionary.
No. Yeah. Okay.
Just that.
Interesting.
I don't want it to be that, like, gender critical feminism is just a response to trans women. Like, I want it to be.
You want to continue once we've won this war.
I think it has already been continued. Like, it's long running.
Yeah.
It's most, like, this is the incarnation of its current enemy.
Yeah.
There will be many enemies to come.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell it in a way that's like,
once this issue is solved, then.
Or even in a way that centers this issue too much. Like people that say, people that call us TERF, right?
Yeah.
They center themselves in our feminism. It's not trans exclusionary radical feminism. Fuck off. It's radical feminism. So I'm just wanting to resist, like, I want to be a gender critical feminist, not a like anti-trans feminist or whatever. Like the anti-trans, the resisting trans bullshit falls out. It's not the point of it.
I know, I guess, but for better or worse, this is the moment in which we find ourselves, and this is the issue.
And this has brought new people to feminism.
That's exactly right.
So maybe I'm just denying an obvious truth, which is like, it actually is about.
Yeah, it's funny when you said, like, I don't want to be reactionary. I was like, it's like it is. Would that be a bad thing?
Do you think it wouldn't? Maybe I just think.
No, that I think it would, yeah. Maybe I think it just doesn't matter. Like, yeah, if we've gathered some adherents, if even those of us who were feminists have got, like, I don't know, heightened clarity or a heightened sense of situation.
I can sort of see what you're saying, because like in 10 years, say the new challenge is some like disgusting form of like fake AI porn or whatever, I'm not going to be like, oh, I really don't want to censor the pornography.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking
No,
about?
that's right. It's like, or why are you trying to, I don't know, speak from nowhere or...
Yeah, no, of course, new threats will emerge that are going to bring new people to feminism, and that doesn't make feminism
And we do have
reactionary.
to respond to them.
Well, it does make it reactionary, but not in a
Not in a
way.
pejorative sense.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's reassuring.
Yeah.
So am I just confusing two issues when I say, like, the example with turf, we don't want to center them in our project? Is that just a different, like, that's about a label or a self-conception? It's not about whether your movement or your reasons for joining it come from a current threat. I'm just mixing two different points together.
Look, I don't know. I guess I can see if you want people to realize that they are buying like a whole suite of beliefs or a worldview, then I can see that it's important to, like, I can see that you would actually want to reject the definition you just introduced.
Yeah. Right. Because
that is central issue. Yeah. I just, what is it? Am I just a pragmatist about this?
Yeah, maybe you just think you can still, like, what are those acrobat thing called? The trapeze. Maybe you can like someone comes off the GC single issue trans trapeze, but they're on the pornography one next. So everything.
No, that is what I think.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So I just think, like, sort of keep it simple, or like,
yeah,
if it's working, keep doing it.
Yeah.
And then once we've won, we'll just draw people to the next issue.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't seem obviously less plausible than that people kind of show up realizing that there's been like thousands of years of patriarchy or whatever. And maybe it's more to get them on board with such a radical reconception of reality. Like, they can see that it's wrong for men to be winning at women's sports.
Yeah.
They can't necessarily see that everything that looks natural is socially constructed.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've settled on a definition in terms of resistance to the tenets of gender identity ideology for a multiplicity of reasons, including feminism, alternative faith, liberal neutrality, and any other reasons people might have.
Yeah. Do you think you could get on sport, some of the gender critical feminists and the like liberal humanists or the sex realists to come apart because the gender critical feminists, like, I do think, I guess I feel like I'm a contrarian now all the time. So when I'm speaking to the people like a little bit who have the trans inclusionary tendencies, then I guess I run the liberal humanist or sex realist line or whatever. But then when I'm speaking to those, that makes it sound like I'm public. I'm not.
But you're trying to speak to them where they are.
Yeah. Or maybe that's what's prompted in me.
Yeah.
And then when I speak to those people, like the sex realist, liberal humanist people, then I think, or is that, I don't know, maybe it's false Australia. Then I'm like, oh, but I mean, separate categories for do it, like, if we want to, how do we like remain open to women's potential? Or so you could get some difference there in like policy position on sport, couldn't you? Plausibly.
You could, yeah. You mean because the feminist, or at least you, because you think that closing the gap is not totally implausible, right? So you're thinking,
yes, that's probably a good way of putting it. That's right.
Close the gap optimist feminist or whatever is going to have a different like set of views about what the
close the gap. I mean, a bit more to that, right? But yeah, it's McKinnon's a dominant. It's maybe like the dominance view, right? Or if you really think, if you're a feminist and you're really centering, because she thinks what a feminist should do, right? Like center the dominance in the analysis, and see everything through that first. So women attribute, and maybe it's not about like denying biological differences, but it's just like about making the like history of dominance and subjection really salient.
But what would
about the implications of that?
I'm just trying to think through what does that mean for sport.
Or like, if women weren't like what's socialized into femininity and into conceiving of their bodies as, pleasurable objects for men, and if they didn't, I don't know, pursue like fitness over all else, they weren't discouraged from becoming muscly.
They might all have those amazing, is it Alona Mayer? I don't know how to say the word, I just follow her on Instagram. The rugby woman?
Yes.
They
Yeah.
might have all amazing bodies like her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel what you're saying.
Like I don't know what policy position that yields, but
Right.
is there something about the I don't know, the hard and fast sex categories
No,
that could mean that we never really do the feminist experiment?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's gonna just taking the sexes as the sex differences as a given,
Yeah.
and then being kind of protective of the female category because we're like the weaker, shitter ones.
Yeah.
That is not going to have any ambition or optimism in it for the feminists who think things could be so different than they are now.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might get some coming apart there. And maybe this is true if we really talked through each space.
Yeah.
Women-only space or women-only
No,
thing, we might find more
that's right. Yeah, I think you're probably right.
ways where they come apart. And surely that would be predicted by, now that we know that the difference is in what ideology you're at from position which you disagree with gender identity ideology, that would predict there's going to be lots of things where we come apart and then disagree about them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we solved it. Good job, mate.
I think we did.
I think we did well. Congratulations, good job, guys.
Except, I mean, well, we have heterosexual. We have always said that we are a motley bunch. The gender criticals.
Yeah, that's true. And we're a small bunch in philosophy, aren't we?
And that's right. I mean, but maybe it's not surprising. Yeah, it's not surprising, I guess, on the Schmidt. What is it? Well, maybe that's not Schmidt, but just always makes me think of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what the GCs are.
Yeah.
Oh, which does vindicate the definition that you introduced of the
last one,
like framing it in terms of resistance.
Yeah, good.
Because we are all opposed.
That's all of our common enemy, and that's what unites us for now.
Yes.
But then we are going to go to war on Alex for being and not being a feminist.
Yeah.
Watch out, Alex. Why are we leaving Thomas out of this?
Oh, we
staked his claim.
That's right. Yeah,
because there was a bit of hope at the end of that video, wasn't there?
Well, I just read that was the feminist video to me. No more rape. Feminists push back on the pronouns.
We should let them come on and defend themselves.
Claimed Thomas as feminist.
Awesome. Okay, well, that was a great chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.